Hello YouTube and hello Ninth Age community. This is Charles with Cybershade Gaming and I'm bringing you another Ninth Age battle report. This is Buckeye Battles 2020 Round 5. We have a very classic matchup. Empire of the Sonnstahl versus those pesky Orcs and Goblins. So looking kind of back on my list, I thought this would be an interesting time considering this is the last game to reflect on how my list has done. So, the Inquisitor really hasn't contributed all that much. I don't think I've used him all that efficiently so far in the tournament. He helped kill the Abomination game 1. Game 2, he sort of provided an extra threat. He didn't die, which was good. Game 3, he just sat in the big bunker with all my knights, and they all didn't really get to do anything that game. And then game 4, a very similar circumstance where everyone was all together. He couldn't leave, because of the alchemy of that game. And, just didn't really didn't get to do all that much. Knight Commander's been solid when he's been able to fight. Obviously holding everything together. BSB's been solid himself too. The Aether Icon combo with the Obsidian Rock on my Prelate, which I don't see it in this picture, but I know that's what it was on there. I think this might have been the list that I needed to correct. Yeah, the Pyromancy's been decent. I can't really complain all that much. Every now and then it feels like it should do more damage, and it doesn't quite do as much damage as you'd probably like. But that's okay. I think it works okay with this list. I don't know if I'm completely sold on it over something like Cosmology, or definitely not Div, definitely not Alchemy. It'd probably be either Cosmology for me. The Knights have been solid. They've held on to a lot of points this tournament. When they've been able to fight, they've been doing well. The Little Bunker Knights has been okay. Hasn't really done anything bad. It's been useful a couple times. Crossbows have been okay. The Imperial Guard Bunker has been interesting. A little slow and unwieldy. Sometimes I kind of wish that my BSB was in that bunker, actually, instead of being in the Knights. Which unfortunately then does reduce their overall movement. So that's something to consider. The Riders have been solid. The 3 units of 3 have been nice. And the Flagellants have been nice. Yeah, I like the 24 Flagellants with the champion. They do a pretty good job of getting in the way most games. They're a good combat unit that isn't scoring that you can throw away each game. Yeah, I think every game they've contributed something so far. And of course, the Steam Tank has been pretty solid. It survived against that Dark Coach in round 3, which was incredible. And overall, just been, adding damage and soaking up shooting and soaking up magic. Our objective this last game was secure target, and our deployment was frontline clash. Let's take a look at my opponent's list. We'll look at the magic cards we selected, and we'll get into deployment. So this game from Pyromancy, I took Scorching Salvo, Cascading Fire, Flaming Swords, and Pyroclastic Flow. I also took Quicksilver Lash. I would have liked to have taken Fireball too, but I felt like Salvo would have been really good for some of the small things in my opponent's list. And actually, speaking of that, we have to look at my opponent's list. This is my opponent's list. Mike Smith, playing Orcs and Goblins. He's got an Orc Warlord, who's the general. He's a Feral Orc Warlord on a boar with light armor that gives him that has Tuck-Tack's Guard. He's got the Omen of the Apocalypse and Potion of Swiftness. So very tough dude. He's got another Orc Shaman, he's got an Orc Shaman that's also Feral on a boar, Wizard Master with Shamanism and the Skull Fetish, which is an awesome build. And he's got another Orc Warlord who's Feral, who's on a war boar with paired weapons, Shady Shanking, light armor with Essence of Mithril, and a Binding Scroll. So very awesome characters. Also tagging along is a Goblin Witch Doctor, who is an adept with witchcraft with the Book of Arcane Mastery. So great magic, tough characters, no BSB, but then again, a lot of the things are, feral and, I mean, there's a decent amount of, insignificant across the different goblins and stuff like that. So very, oh no, sorry, I lied. There is a BSB in the list. We'll get to that. 14 Orc Boar Riders, Pharaoh with Shields, Rending Banner, Musician Champ. 14 Orc Boar Riders, Feral Orcs, Shield Standard Bearer with Rending Banner and Musician Champ. 26 Goblins that are common with Shield Musician Champ. 11 Mounted Edbashers who are also Feral, Shield, Standard Bearer, Minonox Totem, Musician Champion. 2 Nasher Wrecking Teams, 2 Things of 5 Forest Raiders that are Forest Goblins, 2 Scrap Wagons, and a Great Green Idol who is, in fact, the BSB. So, yeah, tons of mounted boars, some good characters, decent amount of scoring between the 4 units, and then just a little bit of chaff all at the end there to round it out. So, this is my opponent's spells from Shamanism. He took Awaken the Beast, Chilling Howl, Swarm of Insects, and Totemic Summon, which are all great spells. He took Bring the Pain and Twisted Effigy from the Witchcraft Adept, which are also really great spells. Oh, that was surprising. So this is my opponent's deployment. So starting on the left, going to the right, he's got a Scrap Wagon. He's got one of his National Wrecking Teams near the forest. He's got his first unit of the Feral Orc Boars with his general in it, with the Omen of the Apocalypse. He's got his Goblins with his Wizard Adept behind the field. In front of the field, he's got another Nasher Wrecking Team. Inside of the field, he's got his mounted Edbashers. Those are, the tougher ones from Special, and they have the Wizard in it. He's got his Great Green Idol, BSB, another Scrap Wagon, and then his other unit of 14 Feral Orc Boar Riders with his other Feral Orc Warlord. It's a great picture of his National Wrecking Team, which is really cool, but that's also showing where his general, with the Omen of the Apocalypse on the left there, and then his Shaman is sort of, I guess, almost he has a different colored base than the rest of the guys. It's kind of just a very brown, plain base. That guy is the Shaman, and also I have to say shout out to that unit of mounted Edbashers. The Empire unit fillers are quite inspired and very cool, even though it twists me up inside and makes me, want to seek righteous vengeance against these orcs in the name of Sana. And here is his other Shady Shankin Warlord. So that's him right there on the gigantic boar. He hasn't scouted his spiders yet. That will come soon. This is my deployment. So starting on the left, I have my unit of riders with the repeater guns. I have my crossbows on the hill next to my knights with all my characters in it. And then I have the unit Electoral Cav and the Wizard Bunker with his Imperial Guard. In front of the Wizard is 5 riders with brace pistols. And my steam tank next to the forest. In the forest, I put my Flagellants, who, are chilling in the forest. And then I have 5 more riders with brace pistols. So, my opponent scouts and vanguards to the spiders. This is after vanguarding on the left. And you can see the vanguards and scouts on the right. So, Orcs and Goblins turn 2. I was able to pick table sides. My opponent dropped first to get turn 1. On the start of turn 1, the first thing, no charges. He moves his Mangler Squig. It hits triples and dies. So, very lucky turn 1. And then this bad boy also hits, it doesn't hit triples, but he hits this dangerous, the rune right here and takes 2 wounds. So, yeah, I was feeling pretty excited about that. You can see the rest of his kind of moves right here with his 2 other random movers. And then you can see the rest of his movement. So he, sort of moves up one of his spiders, He's actually frenzy baiting the flagellants with the other unit of spiders, which was a really good idea on his part. And yeah, the kind of the boar units advance, get close to some stuff. We'll definitely be able to probably attempt some turn two charges. And yeah, the one pump wagon on the left doesn't really have a good direction to go, so it just sort of goes to the left. He's able to get twisted effigy on my wizard master, which was tough. He also gets a swarm of insects off on these guys. It doesn't quite kill them. And yeah, this is going into Empire Sonnstahl turn 2. Or turn 1, my bad. My apologies. So, yeah, the flagellants fail their frenzy, which is not surprising, and they have no leadership, discipline next to them. So they are going for it. They're going to go beat up those spiders. And I decide to pretty much just move the rest of the battle line. I try to kind of face. The only thing I really didn't see was how close the feral orcs, kind of right in front of the ruins, are to the steam tank. I think they only needed a 9, and for some reason, just eyeing it on the board, it looked a lot farther. Otherwise, I feel like I probably should have chaffed with my riders instead, to make sure that they couldn't really go anywhere. Because the Great Green Idol's pretty far, the mounted badgers are far, and the ones on the hill are probably within range to charge, but it's probably a boxcar, so you could get the hill bonus, but that's about it. And yeah, so not a lot of movement. I think I put ready aim fire on the crossbows just so they have accurate. I didn't really need it anywhere else. And yeah, that's not a lot of movement. Going to the magic phase, flux card 5. I'm able to get cascading fire off to kill the mangler squig, and I hit a blaze on those spider riders, and they flee. I think I just killed 2, but then they go through my riders, and they take another DT, and they end up right there. And that's it for magic. Not a very eventful phase, unfortunately. I think this is from my riders moving back and shooting. They're somehow able to poke 2 wounds on this bad boy over here, which I thought was pretty dang good. And then my crossbows shoot at these orcs, and they do 3 wounds too, which is not bad. And then over here, the riders shoot, and they do 2 wounds themselves. So, going into my opponent's turn 2, so he actually calls out his warg at this point, and he's able to get his feral orcs into the steam tank with the omen of the apocalypse. So that's not good. The flagellants easily killed the riders, took a couple wounds, and they couldn't make the overrun into... They attempted, but they couldn't make the overrun into the Great Green Idol, so he charges in, and the feral orcs charge in as well. And this guy takes 1 DT, which was nice, but I don't know how impactful that will be at this point. And then this was just total blunder on my part. I've moved these guys. I wanted to charge these guys at the pump wagon, but my opponent was able to skillfully maneuver his orcs so that there's just not enough space. And with the random move and Great Green Idol, I couldn't fit between. So I didn't know what to do, so I didn't really want to just chaff right away. So I ended up just, shooting those orcs last turn. And something in my brain just didn't click because I thought, oh, pump wagon does random move first, and these guys will just move, so I'll be safe. And no, they're just gonna charge Charles. So big blunder there. These guys are just toast at this point. This scrap wagon tries to get these guys, falls a little short. The spiders, the spider raiders continue fleeing. My opponent in the magic phase is able to get Twisted FG off, so that's tough again. Puts Evil Eye on these guys to limit their movement. And then he gets Waken the Beast off too, and I wanted to stop this, and my opponent was able to force it through, and I failed the dispel. And he's also able to get a swarm of insects off too, and kill these guys. So really, really dominant magic phase for my opponent. This thing goes into my riders, and it only gets 2 impact hits. I think it does 2 wounds with it. And then, so I get like 6 attacks back. I ended up poking a couple wounds on it. It wins by the charge, and I still flee. So I was so bummed, and that like I felt like I had this hopeful moment of like, oh yes, it like flubbed on its impact hits. Maybe I'll be no. I'm still gonna run off the board. So unfortunately, that thing gets to just turn, and it's feeling good and feeling alive. Combat's pretty brutal for the flags over here. They, just can't really do a lot to the Great Green Idol. It's not a good matchup for them. I do poke 1 wound on it, and I actually poke 1 wound on the Feral Orc Warlord right there too. So we'll see if those wounds can do anything later in the game. Ooh, this was sad. Yeah, the Omen I think gets maybe a 2 on the dice, so it's able to do a couple wounds, and then just with everything else, just it's yeah, it's a can opener with that unit, and they just do it dirty and take the steam tank off in 1 turn. I do some wounds back to him because I strike Simo with his charging orcs. But yeah, I was a little bit sad to see that just disappear in 1 turn, and that was definitely my bad too for making that even possible for my opponent. And even worse is these guys are able to overrun into my Imperial Guard. And this is actually Empire Sonnstahl 2 as well, because you can see we've fought a combat. So basically what happened on my Empire Sonnstahl turn 2, which things started really shaking up, and I kind of didn't really get to take as many pictures as I wanted, or as I should have, really. I decided to charge my Electoral Cavalry into the flank of this unit. My Imperial Guard had to hold, and I moved up my Knights so that I could have my discipline on this unit. And I also wanted to try and, start setting up some charges for these guys in the hopes that these Imperial Guard could hold for a couple turns, give my Knights some time to move around, and then kind of see what happens. I also moved my Inquisitor out of my Knight unit too, to sort of be an additional threat, in that I kind of was thinking, my opponent doesn't have any magic missiles that can affect him. Most of the small chaff is out of the game. I feel like he should have been roaming around on his own from the beginning. So that's what I ended up doing. So this is after combat. I've lost the Wizard, and I've lost 4 Imperial Guard. So I still actually have 2 ranks. That's a 6-person unit filler. That's accurate for how many models are left in the unit. So they stick. The Electoral Cab with gray weapons needed, I think, an 8 to stick, and they can't stay in there. So unfortunately, they fled because they were 4x3 and didn't have a rank. So unfortunately, they might have had a worse. They might have needed a 6 on discipline, and they couldn't stick, which would have been nice to keep them around because I had a champion in that unit too, and that could have actually changed how this went. So yes, yeah, that's a good picture to show them fleeing and ending up right there. I moved my riders over. I want to say I was able to use just my crossbows to get rid of the scrap wagon too. You can see my Inquisitor hanging out on his own. And then this is kind of, well, yeah, actually, this is probably after the end of the Flagellant combat, how my opponent reformed. Yeah, I don't think the Flagellants did all that much more. Yes. So here's a good pick. This is Orcs and Goblins turn 3 now. So my opponent moves up his Big Great Green Idol. He moved out his Shaman out of the unit in case the Inquisitor, wanted to go in there and try and snack some points. And yeah, so yeah, that's what it's looking like. So he gets Twisted FG on my Crossbowman. Puts Evil on my Knights. And that's about for magic. Going in this, my champion, I want to say, actually fights his champion and loses, unfortunately. And I don't kill his champion. And yeah, you can see I still got a rank, which is good. and we do wound, but we're just able to stick around. So that was helpful. I decided to go into the Great Green Idol this turn. And yeah, I actually wanted to try my charge. I actually charged the Inquisitor at the Feral Orc Edbashers and failed that charge too. And my Knights Electoral Cav rallies, which was great. And I moved up my Riders. I ended up redoing my Riders again in the movement phase to try and keep his Feral Orc Warlord with the Omen of the Apocalypse out of combat. So I went into this thinking I will definitely kill this Great Green Idol before it gets to do anything, and then I'm just gonna have to turn, and I'm gonna have to. I have steady men on my knights, and I'm just gonna have to see what I can do, because at this point, if I just held back, I'm losing the objective. He's got like all these he's got like stuff like if he's got the Omen of Apocalypse guy in my deployment zone. So I decided I just wanted to go for it. So I go for it. The only thing that really made me nervous was how far that pump wagon was, because I did not want that thing doing anything to me. I ended up getting Flux Card 3. And I think I maybe get one bound spell off, but I don't think it's very consequential. It might have been Suna's Fury, just to try and do some damage to that Great Green Idol, which I think actually did poke a wound on, which was helpful. And these guys finish off my Imperial Guard to a man, and the champion's just alive with the Omen of the Apocalypse guy. They reform to look like this. And we killed the Great Green Idol. Yeah, we got Suna's Blessing off for flaming attacks, which is inconsequential. I just didn't have anything else to do. And then this is Orcs and Goblins turn 4. So, he brings both of the Edbashers and all the Orcs into combat. He charges with the Apocalypse guy at my Riders. They flee very minuscule. He attempts to redirect into the Knights. They flee as well, which I don't know, might have been worth holding. I don't know. He would have chewed through them actually. Anyway, and the pump wagon fails by 1 inch to get into that combat too. So huge sigh of relief right there that scrap wagon failed to do that. Gets to Fidefchi off of me because these guys are in range to shoot his wizard if they could. And then he's able to get Awaken the Beast off on his knights, which I didn't like, but I had to stop the hereditary spell, and actually I kind of showed my hand here. So this combat was intense. Let's break it down. Overall, as you can see, it ends up being very good actually. So what happens is he uses Minonox Totem to turn the Hero's Heart off on my Prelate, because my Prelate was in contact with the Feral Orc unit and probably could have done a lot of damage to them and gotten a lot of combat res and also reduced his combat res. There's no duels or anything. The Shady Shinken guy, kills like 3 knights. And the rest of the guys, he kills 7 knights total. My Knight Commander kills like 3 guys. My Prelate ends up actually doing okay with his 3 attacks, and I think he kills 2 orcs. And the knight behind him kills an orc, and I think the horse pokes a wound on 2 or something like that. And then my normal knights go back on the Edbashers, and they just go to town. They hit with all their attacks with hatred, and then they wound 6 times, and I get 6 more wounds through. So you can see how devastated the Edbashers are. And they all flee from combat, and we had sort of a little mix up when we were deciding. I was clearly I wanted to go for the Edbashers, and not clearly, because we had a discrepancy. I wanted to go for the Edbashers, and we didn't make it clear enough which roles were which. So both end up getting away. And since we were actually running out of time at this point, this is the end of the game where I was going to be able to get my bottom half of the turn in, and which I believe would be turn 5 or maybe even only turn 4. And he's got his since I did pursue with my knights, and I didn't, unfortunately, didn't catch anything. But since we're like, okay, so this is gonna be the end of the game. So basically, what all that happens was on my last bottom turn, I put my knights so they can score on the objective, and we can just tie it. My knights rallied, my crossbows are alive, and I thought about charging the Inquisitor into something, but I figured it didn't really seem like it. I think I thought about going for the Goblins, but then I also thought that he could just bounce, and that would be bad too, because he does have a decent amount of static combat res. And I would actually need to roll well. So I figured I didn't even want to risk it. I was comfortable with just tying the objective. And yeah, this is where the game ends. So this game ends up being a 12-8 and that's just on points. So all his 2 Feral Orc Boar units are fleeing at the end of the game, and his and he has 2 characters that were fleeing, and his other core unit of Feral Orc War Riders is down to 1 model, so I got half points there. So we actually we both gave up quite a bit of points, in that I lost my Wizard, my Imperial Guard, I lost my Steam Tank, my Flagellants, I think all my Riders, and yeah, that sounds about right. Where my opponent, he gave me half points on both his core units of Boars. He gave me full points on his big unit of Ed Bashers. He gave me half points on his 2 fleeing characters. He lost most of his chaff except 1 pump wagon, pretty much all his chaff but the 1 pump wagon, and then he lost his Being Great Green Idol. So that's how we got to a 12-8 on points. Which now let's talk about the end of the tournament. So, Buck Battles 2020, with a 4-1 record, I ended up scoring 4th place overall. So this is kind of just snagged this remorse score. You can see kind of how my breakdown was. Picked up 2 16s, that 20 to really give me a lot of points going into day 2. And then 4th round was my my only loss, where I still held on to 5 points. And then against my last round opponent, I, kind of it was super lucky win on that one, honestly, to eke out 12, because it really could have gone a lot worse if my dice really picked up in that last combat. And even if my dice were as hot, even just that pump wagon making it into combat would have been the equalizer, and I would have lost, and I would have had to minimize break test, and who knows what would have happened then. So huge lucky win at the end of the tournament. I was pretty happy too, because Mr. Andrew Ratman, who I played round 4, was the winner of the tournament, and I was the only one that he pretty much crushed. He had, I think, 93 battle points or something like that. So I actually kept the most points from him, which I felt pretty good about. And I was able to win Best Carbon Faction. So there was an interesting thing that Jeff did this year at Buckeye Battles, where he split us all into alliances once we sort of were registered. And there was 3 different factions, Scarlet, Gray, and Carmine. So I was able to win the Best Carmine Faction, which was pretty cool. Here's a nice little shot of my boys after all their hard work with their award. Pretty happy about that. And picked up a bunch of swag too. I love, one of my favorite things about Buck Battles is they always have a great kind of little prize raffle where you get some tickets just by registering and coming, and then you can pick up some more tickets for a little bit of cash. And I was able to pick up that Ogre Kingdom's Iron Blaster and Scrag, and then I also picked up this Kurt Hellborg, and this was a shocker too, because you can see that box is a little frayed. It was an open box. Inside of it was Kurt Hellborg and the Mad Count from Averland or something like that too. I can't think of his name offhand. So I picked up these 2 beautiful pewter models, absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to paint those up and play with them. And then another one of the guys from Michigan picked up Best Scarlet, which was one of my close friends, a Beastards player, Alex Meyer. And Mike Smith, who I just played in this game, picked up Best in Gray Faction. So the Michigan guys, we really cleaned house. My second round opponent, Neil Hamilton, took Best General. He took third overall with Best General, and then Mike Maddox took second overall. Yeah, so really, Michigan guys, we came in, we dominated, we cleaned house. Well done, boys. You know, everybody, I hope this has been an enjoyable tournament for y'all to watch. Thanks for watching all these battle reports. Thanks for all your comments. Feel free to continue liking and subscribing. I'm trying to respond to comments as much as possible, and we'll see you soon with another 9th Age battle report.